4x multi-frame generation running at 200 plus FPS, buttery smooth, zero stutters. Nvidia says this only works on newest gen. Well, today we will break this myth. One free mod, one file. And Nvidia locked this feature to sell you new expensive graphics cards when your current GPU can run it right now. Today, I will show you how to unlock what they're hiding. Nvidia announced multi-frame generation at CES, claiming it requires new RTX 50 series hardware, some magical AI tensor breakthrough that older cards just can't handle. Except here's the problem with that story. It runs on DirectX 12, and your RTX 3070 from 2020 has DirectX 12, your RTX 4060 has DirectX 12. Hell, even AMD and Intel cards have DirectX 12. So what's the real reason Nvidia locked this feature? Money. They want you buying RTX 50 series cards instead of proving your current hardware works perfectly fine. But the modding community said no. DLSS Enabler version 4 just dropped on Nexus mods, and it unlocks 4x multi-frame generation, screen space ray-traced global illumination, and adaptive frame generation on any DirectX 12 compatible GPU from Nvidia, AMD, Intel, doesn't matter. Now before we go further, this is tech preview software. It's experimental, expect some bugs, but the performance gains are absolutely real, and I'm going to show you exactly how to install. Installation takes 30 seconds. You download DLSS Enabler from the tech preview section on Nexus mods. Over 126,000 downloads so far. Community has verified this works across multiple GPU generations. You rename the downloaded file to one of 5 names depending on your game. Version.dll works for most modern games, so start there, or use other options. Drop it in your game's root folder. That's where the game executable lives, not the system directory, not the binary subfolder, the exact same location as your game.exe file. Launch the game, press tilde key. That's the key left of number 1 on your keyboard. Settings menu appears as an overlay. Set multi-frame generation to 4x. Enable adaptive frame generation so it intelligently turns on and off. Turn on fake ray tracing if you want dramatically better lighting. Click apply and done. Took me less than a minute to install in Cyberpunk. Now let's see if Nvidia's artificial lock was justified or just corporate greed. Cyberpunk 2077, RTX 5070, DLSS performance at 2K with full path tracing enabled. I'm getting around 50 to 60 FPS depending on scene density. Playable, but not smooth on a high refresh monitor. You can feel the choppiness during fast camera movements. It's that awkward zone where it's not unplayable, but definitely not fluid. Now I enable 4x multi-frame generation. Almost 200 FPS. Same RTX 5070, same path tracing settings, same 4K resolution, but now it feels like I'm playing on a $3,400 RTX 5090 instead of a $700 5070. But sure, Nvidia, tell me again how this requires new hardware that you conveniently just released and want gamers to buy. Here's what's actually happening under the hood. Multi-frame generation uses AI to create 3 fake frames between every one real frame your GPU actually renders. So your 70 FPS becomes 280 FPS. Your 80 becomes 320. You're quadrupling your frame output without your GPU doing any additional rendering work. Yes, these are interpolated frames. They're not real frames your GPU physically rendered. But here's the thing that Nvidia doesn't want to admit publicly. Fake frames at 200 FPS feel infinitely better than real frames at 70. The motion blur smooths out. Camera pans look cinematic instead of stuttery. And on a high refresh display, this is legitimately game-changing, even for single-player experiences.
Now Cyberpunk is the best case scenario because it natively supports multi-frame gen. The mod just unlocks it for non-50 series cards. But here's what even the Nexus page buries in the fine print that most people skip right past when they're downloading. This mod also adds fake ray tracing to games that don't even have ray tracing. It's called Screen Space Ray-Traced Global Illumination. And watch what happens when I enable it. Look at that indirect lighting. Light bouncing off surfaces, coloring walls, depth in shadows, ambient occlusion in corners. You'd normally need full ray tracing for this. But if you be honest, in real gameplay, you won't notice this. So I get better lighting and higher frames from a free mod, while Nvidia's official solution costing another $1,000. Yeah, I see why they don't advertise this on marketing slides at CES. Worst case scenario, Stalker 2, notorious for performance disasters. Unreal Engine 5 running like garbage, shader stutters, frame pacing issues, the whole mess. This is where we see if multi-frame gen breaks. Stalker 2 at 2K, epic settings. No path tracing because it would nuke your GPU if they added it there. Getting 50 to 80 FPS outdoors, but much lower in dense zones. Enable 4x, counter jumps to around 75% more frames on my rig. Sounds great, but here's where cracks show. See those spikes? When base frame rate dips below 60 in heavy combat or anomaly fields, multi-frame gen creates artifacts, ghosting on fast movements, interpolated frames struggling with sudden motion. Still playable, but not as smooth as Cyberpunk. Multi-frame generation isn't magic, it's a multiplier. If base performance is garbage, multiplying by 4 gives smoother garbage with higher counter numbers. This is why adaptive frame generation exists. Turn this on. Mod gets smart. When base FPS is high like 100+, it disables multi-frame gen because you don't need fake frames. But when FPS drops drops below 60 to 70, boom, kicks in, generates frames, keeps you above 120, then turns off when stable. This avoids artifacts in demanding games. Let the mod decide when to interpolate. Now here's where I save you from permanent bans. If you play Valorant, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Apex, Fortnite, Counter-Strike 2, any game with anti-cheat, do not install this mod. This injects files into game memory. Anti-cheat systems see injection as cheating because that's how wall hacks and aimbots work. Multiple users on Guru 3D forums got permanent Call of Duty bans after DLSS override mods. Activision denied appeals, citing unauthorized software manipulation. They don't care you were improving performance. You injected code. Instant permaban. Zero reversal. Some anti-cheat does delayed bans. They detect it, log it, let you play for weeks, then boom. Permanent suspension with zero warning. All progress gone forever. Use this exclusively for single player. Cyberpunk, Stalker 2, Elden Ring, Black Myth Wukong, Red Dead 2. Anywhere you're not risking your account. Competitive multiplayer? Don't touch it unless you want to lose everything. How does this compare to native multi-frame gen on actual 50 series? Native DLSS is objectively better. Nvidia's official implementation has lower latency because hardware accelerated through tensor cores. Better frame pacing from driver integration. Fewer artifacts using higher quality AI models. Tighter reflex integration for competitive gaming where milliseconds matter. But native DLSS requires dropping $800 to $2,000 on RTX 50 series. And if you're on RTX 30 or 40 or AMD right now, this mod gives roughly 80% of benefit for $0 in 5 minutes. You're trading some latency and occasional artifacts for massive frame gains without spending a cent. In single player, where milliseconds don't matter like competitive shooters, that's a no-brainer trade saving hundreds or thousands. Nvidia locking this artificially pisses me off because this proves your hardware is absolutely capable. They just gated it behind new purchases to maximize revenue instead of enabling it for everyone with DirectX 12. Here's the deal. If you have RTX 20 through 40, AMD or Intel, install this now. Backup saves because experimental. Avoid multiplayer with anti-cheat unless you want permabans. But for single player, this unlocks performance Nvidia artificially locked behind $1,000 cards. Subscribe so you don't miss version 5 with more features Nvidia doesn't want you using.